is I'm going to be sharing with you some examples and ways to use Google Forms and how those are going to be set up. Now, with this slight caveat of we're trying to call these sessions plus sessions because we are assuming that you have the basics of Google Forms. So I'm hoping that you do. If you don't, I'm going to go over this extremely quickly. Forms is a collection tool in Google. Okay, so I just had forms.new and I created a new one. And in them, you can add questions, sort of like a survey to collect information. Okay, so like I said, I hope you already knew this, but you can create multiple choice questions, checkbox questions, drop downs, file upload. I'm not going to cover that much. And the reason for that is if you're trying to create a link, especially in a remote situation for an upload version, or you're trying to do anything outside your domain, for some reason, Google doesn't allow that. So if you ever notice you're adding an upload question and then all of a sudden your form doesn't work quite right, it's probably because it's that upload question. Linear scale, multiple choice, checkbox, date, time. So all of those are available to ask questions on a form. Once that information is collected, you can see responses here. And you can go here to a spreadsheet and it will automatically create a Google Sheet for you when you have a Google form. So like I said, it's really brief because we kind of assumed you already knew that. But if you would like, we do have Google Forms training available for sort of the basics of Google Forms. But if you are still a novice, hopefully when you do learn more or you get more, you will say, hey, here's some ideas and ways I can use it. Okay, so here's our agenda today is we're going to focus on 4 main areas of collecting data, how Google Forms can be used to collect data in different ways to do that, how you can create lessons and learning activities using Google Forms, how you can create Google Forms for assessments and different types of assessments, and different things that you can do with Google Sheets. Okay, so we're going to start off here with collecting data. So in these activities, they're created just using Google Forms. Okay, so what I mean by that is I just shared with you these basic question styles with their responses. These are just going to be straight up this type of question here, another type of question next. Okay, and I'm going to show you what that looks like when it's all built out. When I give you this slide deck, what's going to happen is each one of these is going to have 2 links on it. This very bottom one, and I'm trying to do it where the slide isn't viewable, but there will be a link down here to the live form. And then if you click on this link of the form itself, when you get this, what's going to happen is it's going to force the copy where you'll have your own copy of that Google form that you can edit and tweak and have for your own. Okay, so that's how I kind of created this. Is there's a link to the live form to play with it and see what it is. There's a link to the actual Google form itself so you can use it and tweak it. So once again, there's a couple things with Google Forms you need to know. There's 2 different viewable options of Google Forms. There's something called the build form, which is what we're going to be building on. And when you send it out, you're going to want to send it here using either email, embedded on a site, or use a link. Okay, so if I copy this link, you're going to notice that this is going to look different than the form that you're building. This is going to be that live link that everybody can use. Okay, so the ones I'm going to be showing you today are going to be that live link. So knowing that, we're going to go over here and talk about the first way we can use Google Forms. So one way to collect data is to collect information from parents. So at the beginning of the year, I used to always use this for that parent meet the teacher day, or if you have signups or you want to get to know students. So if I go over to this form and I scroll down, I'm going to get a name and a birthday, and then there's going to be guardians, and they're going to offer to volunteer. If you create a question that has checkboxes, you can do more than one answer. So that's how I created that volunteer option there. And then I have parent permission forms, Like, yes, they can take photographs of things. Yes, they can watch a PG movie for, and I still send out the, for full movies, but this is like using clips for different PG movies for different, educational purposes. And then I had them fill out some short answers and on a scale how much they like reading, math, writing, and any additional information I should know. And then when parents submit that, I can go back based on that student and go look at all of that information in one space. Okay, so that's one way that you can have Google Forms. Just set up like a regular form asking for information. The other thing that you can collect for data collection, and it was kind of already built in the one I just did, is create parent permission forms. So if you want to have a parent movie permission form, if you want to have a permission form for doing certain things on a website, you can go ahead and answer through here, and they'll be able to answer I think, yeah, Tale of Despero and Polar Express. I was like, which ones did I have them watch? And I had to make sure that I tied these ones into a parent email address. So that way I can respond to them and be like, hey, did you for sure do this? And you didn't have like your kids fill it out or something weird. But I can collect that permission information that way. These are technically printable. I would say that they are more so created to be digital, more so than printable, but you can print them if you would like. And to get a copy, yes, Melanie, at the end, if you click on any of these, it will give you a copy of all of this. So you'll be able to see a live link, click on the image itself, and you will get your own copy of that Google form. Okay. The next way that I used Google Forms was as a classroom behavior or student refocus page. And I kind of did everything because what was it? Inside Out was coming out. So we were talking like emotions tied to Inside Out. I taught 4th grade. So students can pick their name from here. These are not real names. These are Marvel characters. But students will pick their name, and then they have to explain what was their behavior. What did they want out of this? And these are checkbox answers, so they can select more than one thing. Did you get what you want? And then they have to explain what they could have done differently. So they have to type this out. And what's nice with this is once it's submitted, so I'm going to go ahead and show you because I feel like I kind of zoomed past that a little bit. I'm going to go back. Is if I go to the actual live form, and I got there by clicking on this little pencil, is if I go to responses, you can create that Google spreadsheet right through here, right? So I'm going to create a spreadsheet. And what you can do with this spreadsheet, as well as some spreadsheets with anything that you do collect, is you can go here and see what time that incident occurred. And then even though every student is filling out the same Google form, I can go here and sort this data. So I'm going to show you one time how I did that again. I'm just going to click up here, do this little drop down arrow, and I can sort this sheet by student name. And obviously both times I pick Steve, don't ask me why. Apparently I don't like Steve. So if you do Steve, you can see all of Steve's information. You can take this row and select more than one row and copy all of Steve's, put it on a separate sheet, share that with parents. You can take this timestamp information and you can turn that into a chart or a graph for stat packets. So it's kind of nice that you can take that Google form and you can pull that behavior information, and the students are actually the ones that are filling it out for themselves, right? So that was another way to use Google Forms. The next way I used Google Forms, and this is more so in class, but it doesn't have to be a bathroom, tracking bathroom passes, but it can be also for tracking classroom supplies, for checking out books, for signing out equipment. I used to have some science equipment I would let students take home and play with, and so I would check it out. You can have a hall pass or a bathroom pass. So if I go here Students just choose their name. They choose if they're going to the bathroom. They choose which location they're going to the bathroom, and they submit it. I used to have an iPad by the door, and it had the responses on it, or not responses on it. It had the options on it, and students would fill it out when they left. Now, what they didn't know is at the beginning of the year, it tracks all of their information. So what's kind of nice is in a Google form, when it collects their information like this, you can add formulas in a Google Sheet, even though it's considered in a Google form. So what I mean by that is it collected all the students' data here, and it's all random. I'm waiting for it to catch up. Come on, catch up. Maybe. So I can take this information of these students, and what I would do is I create a brand new tab, and I would calculate, I would use a formula that said basically like count if this student came up on this list, and I can see how many times that particular student went to the bathroom. So some students, especially at the beginning of the year, like, hey, I can go to the bathroom whenever I want, went to the bathroom like 67 times, and I would pull them and go, dude, you always go to the bathroom at 11:09. Why is it always 11:09? That's when math starts. I want you to wait until after at least 11:15 to try and go to the bathroom. I'm never going to say no to going to the bathroom, but we need to discuss what's going on that it's 67 times in a month. Okay. And then usually it got shortened a little bit over time, but that is another way to collect data, which is kind of nice. So all of these were created straight up with a Google Sheet. Why did I say Google Sheet? With a Google form tied to a Google Sheet, just using regular different question types. So some of them were multiple choice. Some of them were those checkbox answers where you can answer more than one. Some of them, like the parent one, were short answer or paragraph answers. And even the parent one had a couple linear answers. So on a scale of 1 to 5. Okay. Is there any questions about how Google Forms can potentially be used for collecting data? Because now we're going to make it 1 or 2 steps a little bit more hard.
Is the sheets always attached, or is there a certain specific thing that you have to ensure that you do?
The sheet is always available, but in order for it to be where it actually collects that data is on responses. It's going to collect responses and assume you just want the graphs and charts here on the responses page. Of course, I picked the most complicated form to do it on. Right here, it's not going to have the sheet available until you click on it. So when I click on that create spreadsheet, it will start to create a brand new spreadsheet. Now, what's nice about spreadsheets is you go to select existing spreadsheet. You can actually have for our digital innovators, we have them sign up every single month because I have to track it for Title IV, but I have it all linked to the exact same spreadsheet. There's just different tabs for every single month on the bottom. So that way I have it all. Okay. So you can choose an existing spreadsheet, or you can create a new one. When you create a new one, it creates it in the exact same drive folder that the form is in, and it puts it basically right next to it, named the same way. So they're going to be right next to each other in your drive. So now let's talk about learning adventures. Okay. These activities are set up using forms, but the forms now have sections on them, and they have something called logic branching, and they have something called response validation. So I'm going to start this a little bit differently. And actually, I put this in the wrong order. I want to do this one first. This one first is I used to have students create interactive narratives once we learned how to create Google Forms. And I used something called branching. So in order to, because I like it already built and made kind of, versus me building it while you're doing it, I'm going to show you what the live form looks like. And then I'm going to show you how we create this using the editable version. Okay. So here I would create a trip to Disneyland because I wanted them to write a nonfiction narrative. So I wrote my nonfiction narrative on Disneyland. And then I had the students build interactive narratives, sort of where their friends can choose their own adventures, right? So in this case, it's which land would you like to go to? So if I select Tomorrowland and I select next, it's going to take me to the Tomorrowland section. So it has a picture of Tomorrowland. Then it says, which ride would I like to go on? And it's going to branch out again. So I'm going to go ride Space Mountain. And that's going to lead me to a video of Space Mountain. Ooh, that was fun. And then I can either go back to Tomorrowland or back to the main entrance. So I'm going to go back to the main entrance. And this time, instead of going to Tomorrowland, I'm going to go to Adventureland. So then you're going to notice that instead of Tomorrowland, it's going to pop me out at Adventureland. And then I can ride one of those rides. Okay, so this is called logic branching. Usually I made mine pretty complicated so they can see everything that you do, because some students would step up. Most of the time I would have them make like 2 options and like 1 or 2 other options. Okay, you don't have to make it all crazy long, because the more branches that you have, the more complicated this is going to be. So what you need to do to create a branching Google form, I'm waiting for it to pull up here in a second though, is you're going to want to make sure you have sections for each branching thing that you do. I have to do it. I don't know if I'm just that kind of visual person. I had my students do it where they would actually map it out to almost like a web versus linear, because when it's linear like this, it's a little bit harder to follow, right? So for every option, you need to create a new section. Okay, so I'm going to go up here to the very top one, and to go with all of these options, it has to be multiple choice. You want to make it required and you want to make it multiple choice. That is how it branches off. So I'm going to go here. I'm going to click on this multiple choice question, if it doesn't freeze, and I'm going to add Toontown. Okay, now when I have this option, what you're going to notice is I can go to any section based on an answer. Okay, so that's how this one is set up. So I'll show you how to do that in a second. I'm trying to click off of it. What you need to do is you need to make sure that those sections are already made. So here's how you create a section. I'm going to create this here. It's just this bottom button right here that says Add Section. When I click on Add Section, it's going to create a new section. And you're going to have to put a title. So I'm going to title this Toontown. And we're going to pretend like I added a picture there and I have a description. Toontown, here it is for you. Okay, now I have this section, right? Up here on that question that I want to branch out, there are 3 dots in this bottom right corner. This is where all the magic happens, okay? You go to these 3 dots and you choose go to section based on answer. So I'm going to, at the risk of stressing myself out, I'm going to turn it off. So I just killed it. This is what it normally looks like when you do multiple choice. It's just blank, right? If I go here and select go to section based on answer, it's going to pop these open and it'll have a drop down for every section I've created. So you're going to want to create those sections and name them first, and make sure that that naming matches your answers. It makes your life so much simpler. So in Tomorrowland, I want to go to section 3 Tomorrowland. On this one, I want it to go to section 6 Adventureland, and so forth and so on until I have all of these filled out based on where I want people to go. Now, the thing with branching questions and what makes it a little bit difficult is you don't want to submit this form. It's almost creating like that loop, that kind of feedback loop where it never ends. So you don't want them to be able to submit this form. The way to double check that, I'm just trying to finish this off so I knew what it was, but I don't think I have one for that. I'm going to go ahead and delete this option so it doesn't mess up the form when you guys play with it later. I'm going to take this one and I'm going to do these 3 dots and delete this section because I don't want it. Is down here after this section, we never want it to submit the form. So it's going to default for every new section that you create to submit form. We don't want that. We just want it to continue to whatever that next section is based on that multiple choice question. So the multiple choice question has to be last, and you want to change this to continue to next section. And when you view this, it's not going to have that giant long list of sections. It's going to go to those sections based on whatever that answer is. Okay. Now, knowing that we've done that, I'm going to go back this direction. You can create lessons and activities right through a Google form using that same structure. So if I go here to these questions, I created ones that said, go to a section based on life science, earth and space science, or physical science, and that will lead them to a lesson that has a video. Whoops, going down here, a lesson that has a video on it. And then they can take those answers. They'll be able to submit it this time right here. They'll be able to submit it. And then I set it up where they can fill out another response, going through the gear icon and going to presentation, show a link to submit another response, and then they can start over and do a different content area. So next time they can choose the human body, watch that video. The next time they can choose earth and space science, watch that video and fill it out. So forth and so on, depending on what content area they choose. So that's another way you can use that branching for actual lessons. Going along with this, it doesn't have to be long, and it doesn't even have to be branched out, okay? You can create exit tickets with content in it for branching, really, really simple. So what I mean by that is I'm going to get rid of this one. I'm going to go to this one. Students round to the nearest 100. And if I get the wrong answer, I'm trying to find the wrong answer. Let's do this one. And I go to next. It's going to branch out and say, ooh, you didn't quite get that right. Watch this video on how to round your number. Are you ready to take the exit ticket again? I'm going to go yes. And it's going to bring it back to that first page. And if I get the right answer, then it's going to say, woohoo, congratulations, you can move on. Apparently I didn't get the right answer. But that is another way you can use branching is on exit tickets. Another way you can set up Google Forms, not super hard, but a little bit different, is in an escape room. So you can give students clues and information and not allow them to go past this section unless they get the right answer. So I have on the slide deck here a Google Form live link here that you can look at later. You can play with this. If you go through that Google form, it has the answers for you, but you can see how you can't move on unless you have the right answer. Okay, so for example, if I'm down here and it says match the definition on the card with the correct word, write the direction letters associated with each answer below in order, make sure you use capital letters. So I used to have like cards hidden around the room and we would do an escape room, but it would all be run through a Google form. If a student put the directions wrong, like north, north, east, south, south, west, west, and they tried to move on, it will say, nope, try again, you did it in the incorrect order. So this time I have the answers here, so that way you don't have to know them. I'm going to do south, north, northeast, southwest. Go next, and once I get that correct answer, it's going to move me to that next section for the next clue. Okay, so this is how you can set up a Google form for a breakout room. This is very similar to branching, but instead of branching, it's going to have something called response validation. Okay, so if you notice here on my sections, I still have this section, the next section, the next section, and then the final clue. So if right before the very bottom of the next section, I'm going to go over here to click on these 3 dots, and there's going to be an option for response validation if you choose a short answer. Okay, so before we did multiple choice, go to a question based on an answer. Now that we have a different thing, which is a short answer, it's going to allow us to do response validation. With response validation, here are some options. You can do numbers, text, length, regular expressions. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do a regular expression that matches exactly what this is. So you have to put it exact here for response validation and then continue to the next section. That is all you have to do to create that section that won't move on unless you have that correct answer. I would say you do need to make this question required though, or else they'll just skip it. Okay. Now I like how Norma, right, just talked about using this for younger students, like having voice directions for struggling students, for students that are younger. So let's look at this one. I created a diagraph Google form where students can just pull their name. They can watch a video about SH. They can go on to the next section. And what this has is they can type in the word shell, they can type in the word shoe, and then on the next one, which picture begins with the sh sound. So I'm going to show you how we can add pictures. So you can add pictures as options. So down here, we added pictures, right? On all of these. Now you're going to notice a link here. I would, for little students, ask parents, and the only problem is I need to see how this works on an iPad because I figured this out like 5 days ago. There's something called Talk and Comment, and it is an extension. So if I go to extensions or the Chrome Web Store, you're going to want an extension called Talk and Comment. Okay, so here's Talk and Comment. I'm going to go ahead and add that guy, and I'm going to make sure that it's turned on. And I'm going to go back to this one. Nope, not to this one, to this one. I'm going to reload it. And as long as you have the Talk and Comment extension, you're able to add voice recordings straight inside a Google form. Okay, so down here, if you notice, there's a little play button. So I don't know if we can hear it because I'm not sharing my tab, but I'm going to try the best I can. Whoops, my husband's computer has a different sound than I do. So, ship. You sail on a ship. Car. You drive in a car. So as long as you have this extension on Chrome, students have it and you pull it, you can add voice comments to a Google form. Now, Google form, you just send the link through Seesaw and it should work. It should work with pictures exactly how it is. The only thing is I'm trying to learn how Talk and Comment works on an iPad. That's not exactly clear as of yet. So I will post in a reflection kind of document what it was that I was doing. So to show you how Talk and Comment works, I'm going to go here to this picture of an octopus. I'm trying to think of ocean animals that are. So to do this, I have the SH sound. I'm going to do multiple choice, and you can add images here, right here in the question, or on option 2, I'm going to select option 2. I'm going to go to add image, and this time I'm going to do a shark. I like that. So I'm going to go to Google image search, pick a shark. These are all Creative Commons too. I'm going to pick this guy. He looks cool. I'm going to insert him. And then the other options, I would just pick something like a seahorse or like a, why can't I think of anything that lives in the ocean? I'm going to do a seahorse because that is tricky. He's pretty. Okay, so I'm going to insert that one. So to use Talk and Comment, it's going to create this little bubble right here. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to shark. Put my cursor right after this. All you have to do is select Talk and Comment. It's going to always pop up on the side. Oh, it's not going to pull audio. Sorry, because I'm using a different mic than the one I normally use. I have one here for presenting, but we're going to pretend. So I'm going to go here to check. Shark. Sharks eat fish. And then I'll hit select when it actually does have the microphone. I don't have the microphone hooked into it yet. And then it creates a link right into the form itself as like a big full link right here. And I'll show you one that's already made. So see, it'll have a full link here. But when you go here to send it out in the live form, oops, I'm going to preview it instead. If I preview it here in that live form that I just showed you, it's actually going to have a play button instead of the little play button instead of the ship. You sail on this ship. Okay, so that's how that Talking Comment extension works. It works best for little students if they have that Talking Comment extension enabled. Because it's newer, I have to work with our team to make sure the policy's good, that all of that stuff's all together before we make sure that for students for Talking Comments. So that's why it's available. It works awesome. It's just, it's not, how do I put it? It hasn't been vetted as much because it's newer, but that is how you can add those voice little clips into a Google form. Another way that I have done this though is I've added little tiny videos. If you have a Screencastify extension, so here's the Screencastify extension. I create very short, tiny, like screencast videos where I'll just have a picture of a shark on here and I'll say, shark, here is a shark, because you can add the YouTube video link right inside a Google form and it will embed that video inside it, right? Students would want to download that Talking Comment extension because that's what allows it to be viewed like this, like a play button. Car, you drive in a car. If they don't have that enabled, whoops, if they don't have that enabled, it's just going to look like a link. They can click on a link, which isn't hard, but it's going to open it on another tab, which kind of defeats the purpose of wanting to keep the little students in the same space to make it easier, right? So that's kind of why I say we're looking into that Talking Comment extension right now. So I was trying to think of littles. Works for ESL too. For students who have IEPs to talk into, you can record directions in Spanish, that kind of thing. It's kind of awesome. So let's look at assessments, okay? If you want, you can create homework or Google Classroom, not Google Classroom, homework or classwork logs where students can select their name, a date, and information that they'd like to collect. If you are creating this as a log, I would create one separate Google form and one separate, I know it seems like a lot, but you keep it in one folder. It's not super bad to manage. One Google form and one Google Sheet per student. So that way you can share the sheet itself with your student and they can track all of the progress that they've made. Okay, so that's why it's really nice to keep that information and data separate. So students can really say, wow, I've done 115, my students used to love to see it. I've done 115 logs, Mrs. Nina, since the beginning of the year. I'm like, that is kind of amazing. You know, so they can really look at it and see how they were doing. I don't think you have to force a student to read a certain book or read a certain amount of time every night, but it is nice for them just to say, hey, what part of the plot were you reading in a narrative fiction book? What do you believe is the theme of your book? And just keep changing up those questions on the forms for students. I used to do it throughout the year if we switched to nonfiction or if we switched to a different topic. I taught 4th grade, and so I would do that kind of often. Another way to use Google Forms for assessment is to create with that multiple choice grid, and you can have criteria here on the left and have numbers here on the right and use this as a rubric. Now, I liked to use these as rubrics. I used to do it for student presentations, like group presentations, or I would do it for, I'm trying to think of other things I did it for, biographies, for class discussions. And so students would work with me on the board and we would build out that criteria all together, and you can actually write it where it's longer and you have more. And then I would give this live link to my students, and while students were presenting, they can grade each other on this Google form. When I get the Google Sheet, I can sort by students, take an average of all of those grades, and then give that information back to the student. Dorothy, I'm kind of trying to figure out what spreadsheets be separated after it's been set up for the class.
The grading, that's what I'm talking about. Once I establish it, can I just put the math, the reading, the different content areas into a different spreadsheet instead of it being one linear spreadsheet?
Yes, but no. If you want it to be the one form, it's going to be collected on that one sheet regardless. And if you change the question and you tweak it, it always puts the question on the very back end of the sheet, which is kind of frustrating. And that's one thing I don't like about Google Sheet, Forms, is it does that. But what you can do is you can pull that data out using formulas and stuff, but it's more complicated to do it that way. My suggestion would probably be just to create a separate Google form that has, like, for math, or a separate Google form for reading, and then it would pull all of that out into a separate sheet. But I could put all of those tabs on that sheet in one same sheet.
Thank you.
Another thing you can do for, did I do that? Assessments is create a content quiz where if students answer a quiz, you can add something called a Flubaroo extension. And I'm wondering if I had a better example of that. I think it's this one. I'm going to use this one. But if you haven't used, let's go back to this one really fast. If you haven't used Google Forms for quizzes, so I'm going to show you on this one, you can set these up as a quiz. So you don't only have to gather information and data that is like a survey. If I go up here to the settings, I can go to quizzes and I can make this a quiz. I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, when you click on a question, let's do this one. If I click on a question, I now have the option to go into an answer key. So if I select answer key, you're going to notice that this box changed to choose correct answer. And I'm going to select what I think is the right answer right here. And it's going to put a green check mark on it. Now, over here, I'm going to get this link really fast before I delete it. I'm going to delete this because I already had it made. You can provide answer feedback based on how a student answered. So if I go, okay, I'm going to add answer feedback. If the student gets this answer correct based on the answer key, I'm going to say, great job. I can even link it or add an animated GIF or something that dances around like, woohoo, you did it. And I'm going to save it. And then I'm going to go to edit again. And I can add one for incorrect answers as well. So on feedback, I can add a reteaching moment right inside the form itself. So I can say, please watch this video and try this question again. And I can go right here to a YouTube video. And if every APS teacher has a YouTube channel, so I can create my own video, or in this case, I pulled one that already had traditional literature on it. I'm going to select this video. I'm going to save it. And now you notice that when a student gets the correct answer, it's going to link them to something that says, hey, great job. And if a student gets this incorrect, it will play a video after they've submitted their quiz and says, ooh, sorry, you missed this question. Rewatch this lesson. Go all the way down and say retake test and take this test again. Okay. You can take these to get the right answer. The only thing is it doesn't do it by individual question. So what you need to do is go up here to the settings. And on this one, it says limit to one response. I don't want that to be on. Okay. I want to make sure that that is turned off. I do want them to collect email addresses. And on presentation, I want to allow them to submit again. Okay. So here, you need to submit this again after you've already answered it. I'm going to save it. So that way when students preview this, and I can't remember if I thought I already took this one, but maybe not. I'm just going to go ahead and get some of these wrong. I don't even know what I'm answering. Next. And like I said, you can add vocabulary here. And this is the one that we show you how to build if you take the general Google Forms quiz with us. I'm going to submit this. And now I can view my accuracy or view my score, depending on if you want to collect the score or not. And here I can go down and say, oh, I missed this one. I only had one option, so I'm going to look down. Oh, my teacher says I have to watch this video and try it again, so I can watch it straight through here.
Jack in the Beanstalk.
And then I go all the way down to the bottom, and I should be able to submit another response. Oh, over here, sorry. Submit another response. So that is how you can add that to your content. If you do create a quiz, I do like how on responses, for a teacher point of view, I can look at individual students through here. I can look at it on the Google Sheet. I don't like it as much, but I can look at it on the Google Sheet. So I'm going to show you really quick on this one for igneous rocks. Super quick and easy. It's like 4 questions long. I made it super fast. If you go here, I can see all of the student responses that they had for this quiz. And I honestly went back. Everybody got 100%. It was super easy. I went back and pretended to be a student and add bad answers so no one actually got it wrong. It's going to pull up this just like it does on a Google form, okay? There is an add-on called Flubaroo. So you're going to want to go to get add-ons. I use this one all the time. I just think it organizes it better than they actually do. Get Flubaroo. And the way Flubaroo works once you've installed it is you go to add-ons and go to Flubaroo, and it's going to say grade assignment. I'm going to regrade it because I already graded it once, but it's going to walk you through the same steps. So when you grade an assignment, it says, yes, I want to use the sheet that we're on, and you're going to have to pull this through that Google Sheet. And in it, you have to pick which questions identify students, so it's not worth any points, and you can give different points for different questions. And then you need to take the form yourself, sort of like an answer key. So Flubaroo knows who to pull it off of. So over here, I took it myself, making sure I had all of the right answers. And then when you hit continue, it's going to automatically grade all of those assignments. And what it's going to do is it's going to pull it open into a brand new tab on the bottom. But what I really like about Flubaroo is it kind of organizes all of the scores and all that information for you. So hopefully it'll go a little bit faster. Come on. I know we're teaching this to middle school, and that forms one as well. Come on. So now I can see what time they all pulled it. And these students, like I said, they didn't actually fail it. I went back and did it as them. That's why they're right next to each other. Where I can see all of the students who got high scores, and then I have all of the students that had low scores from the actual test. And this is why they like submitted it 5 times or 2 times. I only really let them submit it once. I just added like submitting it incorrectly like 4 times. So that way they got a bad score, which is bad because I wanted to show you what bad scores were because I changed names and all kinds of stuff. But this is how you can use the Flubaroo extension with, or not extension, add-on with Google Sheets and incorporating Google Forms. Okay, so those are some ways you can do assessments. Now let's talk about the Google Sheets themselves. So if I had a Google Sheet, one thing I can do is I used to create this rubric at the beginning of each of my math tests. And I would pull out all of the same standards for the questions, and I would mark which questions they were. And then I would have students take a pre-test, and then I'd have them take a post-test. And so I made up grades for students. And so basically out of 2 questions, I'd offer some extra credit so they get really high scores. Or out of 6 questions, I would get if they got like 3 right or 0.5 right or something. You can select the entire chart. So I'm going to go here and select the whole thing. and I can go here and select turn off or on filters. If I turn on a filter, you're going to notice it's automatically going to create these little drop downs. And I like to keep percentages because the computer knows how to read those really good. So I'm going to click on finding factor pairs of numbers, and I'm going to go to percent. I'm going to clear it all, and it's going to pull up every single option that is here. Okay, so I want the percentages where I want anyone who got 0s, 8s, 50s, anybody who got 67. The other ones, they got high enough scores. I'm not going to look at them. I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to filter out those students who I need to put in RTI groups. So this is how I did RTI groups really super duper fast. And then I would copy their names down, open up this RTI page. Whoops, I have to change that to take off information. Whoa. Thank you. The RTI page, and I can keep all of their data and information in one sheet in one place and see how they're progressing. So that was kind of where I really liked using this filter option. You can also use this filter for a lot of other types of data. So I'm going to clear that off, select all again, and now it's going to open it up for all the rest of my students again. So that's one way you can use that Google Sheets data, including collecting information from Google Forms from it. Okay. Another thing is you can do RTI groups. I already did that one. I have a self-grading rubric here. It doesn't have any punctuation in any of these slots. So if you click on one of them and you add a period, it's automatically going to highlight that section. So let's say they got a 4 in this area, period, and then they got a 3 here, period. You can use this if you want, just make a copy of it, and it'll automatically calculate a score. This is where the formula is, so you can change the amount here for the formulas, the dark blue, but I wouldn't change the actual formula itself. So it says if certain things happen, it'll put a certain score here, and then at the very end, it will calculate the total percent for the rubric. And so I would make a copy for every student and then use this, fill it out, and then send that copy with that student to the student and the parent, and then they would have it. So that in its essence is Google Forms and Google Sheets. So we talked about Flubaroo, RTI, and the rubrics. I do have a feedback form